Hello, my name is Kelly Bassett, and this is my presentation on dismantling stereotypes. For this presentation, the film covered is The Imitation Game, starring Benedict Cumberbatch. The Imitation Game covers Alan Turing's life during World War II, as well as moments from his time in preparatory school and what he was doing after the war. The main focus is how he built a machine called Christopher to break the Enigma cipher that the Nazis were using to transmit all of their messages. To better understand the portrayal of Alan Turing, one needs to know more about autism spectrum disorder. ASD is a developmental disorder of childhood, specifically a neurodevelopmental disorder. This disorder runs on a spectrum and everyone experiences it differently. The spectrum of autism runs from mild to severe depending on the amount of assistance that a person may need. Possible characteristics of ASD are impaired intellectual functioning, problems with social interactions, communication problems, and repetitive or restrictive behaviors. For the film being covered, it is important to note that characterizations of autism were not identified until 1943, while World War II in Europe was ended on May 8, 1945. During the film, Benedict Cumberbatch has continual faltering in his speech where he pauses and stammers. This is noticeable before he even comes on screen due to the voiceover that he is performing. When he does make his first appearance, he has trouble looking the police officers in the eye. These two behaviors continue throughout the film with some exceptions. The character also has difficulty with social cues. During his interview to work at the Bletchley Radio Factory, he has trouble understanding the jokes and sarcasm that Commander Denniston is using. He also is very confused during a scene where his coworker, Hugh Alexander, is flirting with a girl. The character of Turing keeps trying to correct his coworker and is kicked in the leg for silence when he does so. Turing is also portrayed as very blunt. At one point, when firing two members of the Enigma cracking team, he says that his reasoning is that they are idiots, mediocre linguists, and positively poor code breakers. Throughout the film, the character of Turing explains his love of puzzles and shows that he is fixated on his machine. In one scene, the character ignores his colleagues and continues to work on his machine's design instead of going to lunch with them. Toward the end of the film, he chooses to undergo chemical castration rather than be in jail for the then crime of homosexuality so that he could continue to work on his machine. He becomes visibly upset when thinking of not having his machine and needs to be calmed down by Keira Knightley's character Joan Clark. Turing is also portrayed as a very solitary person. He has few friends, he wishes to work alone instead of as part of the Enigma cracking team, and he lives alone. The stigma of autism in society is complex. While the film does fairly well in depicting someone who has a mild form of autism, it seems that the filmmakers did not truly wish to address the disorder. This is because there was no mention in the text at the end that Turing was autistic. Granted, this could be because he was not diagnosed while he was alive, given that the characteristics were not laid out until 1943, when Turing was already in his 20s. Cumberbatch did well in his portrayal of Turing, but there were some mistakes, such as the time when he made full eye contact with other characters and how he understood the social cues that the character Joan gave him when trying to convince her parents that she should work at the Bletchley Radio Factory. Suddenly he understood smiles and head nods, though they had only met once previously. These observations link to the essay that Hayes and Black wrote about how people with disabilities are portrayed in films and television. They mention how the actors that portray these characters are usually not disabled. Benedict Cumberbatch is not known to have autism. The disability is not the focal point of the film. Instead, it is Turing's great achievements as a mathematician, a codebreaker, and the father of computers that is focused on, which can be representative of the supercrip. This also combines with Bloch's common construction that the person with a disability will be compensated for his or her lack by greater abilities and strengths in other areas. In this case, the character of Turing had autism, but it made him better with math and science. While The Imitation Game did numerous things correctly in how it portrayed signs of autism, I do not think the film is a good representation for those who do not know much about the disorder. The first time I watched the film, I had no idea that Alan Turing was autistic, just socially awkward. A way to fix this could be adding a textual overlay at the end about Alan Turing's postmortem diagnosis. That being said, now knowing more signs of autism and rewatching the film made me think about Longmore's quote about disability and how it is more prevalent than we generally recognize or care to notice. This film was interesting because it made me realize how subtle signs of a disability can be and how easily someone with subtle signs can be overlooked. As a future educator, I have learned how important early recognition is so that people with autism can learn skills to help them develop social and communication skills. What really hit home for me was that just because someone has a disability does not mean that they are incapable of learning, and knowing someone's interests can be important in creating a pathway for them to learn. Here are my references, and thank you for watching.